Parshas Terumah, page 444. That starts if you want to follow. So we've gone from, some very exciting parshas with all these stories and all these people, and now we're getting a bit more down to earth, more technical. Because last week we had all these different mitzvahs in Parshas Mishpatim, and now we're in Parshas Terumah, which starts talking all about the concept of the Mishkan, of the portable temple that they had in the desert, and what it means. Now, for the most part, people on the first read will say this is sort of mundane for us. I mean, it's not mundane. It's talking about a temple. Like, how do you build a place where God is going to speak from and God's presence is and all types of miracles happen. But we don't have this anymore. And it tells you this has to be this big, and this has to be this long, and this has to be this high, and it has to be put in here, and you have to make this out of gold, and this out of silver, and this out of wood. And so unless you're an engineer, it's sort of mundane because we don't have it today. But the truth is the commentaries tell us that as the Mishkan was, as this building was, so is the world, and so is a human being. A person and the Mishkan and the world all have similar concepts. Like in other words, how the Mishkan represents certain things, the human body has different parts, represents the same things, and the world itself. So we have all different aspects that are similar. Because you have there's an altar, which is like a table where they offered sacrifices, right? And we have tables in our home, and we have the menorah. The menorah had to do with wisdom, right? We have a brain, and there's all different parts of us, and it correlates in different ways. So some of the things we'll discuss will show that correlation. But in general, if we understand that the Torah is speaking to us no matter where we are and who we are and when it is. So therefore, in those days, it was literal. You built the Mishkan. Later, we were going to build the temple, or we had the temple. So it also fit very well in Jerusalem. Today, it's been 2,000 years since we've had a temple. And for us, our great-great-great-grandparents were born and died, and we, all this time till now, also, and we've never seen it. But it also has meaning for us. And so when it talks about it here, it talks about it literally, and then it talks about it figuratively, and then how it's written teaches us a lot of moral lessons, how to live one's life. So it all depends how you look at it, right? And that's what the Torah is. The Torah seems to have a simple meaning. Every aspect of the Torah, you can read it, it's like reading a book. But then you start wondering why it changes from masculine to feminine in the middle of a sentence, or it goes from singular to plural in the middle of a sentence, or they spell a word one way one place and one way another place, the same word, right? And these are all messages. It's all there on purpose. And then you have all the codes also. Take the fifth letter of each word and take every 5 words and it spells something, right? All of these things are all there on purpose. So when you're studying something that doesn't seem to be pertinent on a simple level, on a deeper level, it's very pertinent. So we'll go through some examples of this. But we'll start with some things that are sort of simple. So we look at it right in the beginning. You have the traditional opening, Vaydaber Hashem LaMoshe Lemor. Hashem tells Moshe, tell the Jewish people the following. Daber el b'nei Yisrael, say to the Jewish people, and what does he say? Vayikhu li truma, me'es kol ish, asher yidvenu li botichu es trumasi. And it basically, he says here, if you just read it in the English, it says, let them take from me a portion. For every man whose heart motivates him, you shall take my portion. What does it mean? You should take from me truma. Truma means a portion of what you have for charitable purposes. In other words, you're giving something to the temple, that's for that's charitable purposes. So, but it should really be written this way. It says, Vayikhu li truma, take for me truma. Who speaks like that? Go to the store and take for me a loaf of bread. It sounds like I'm speaking Yiddish or something, right? You should say, go to the store and get for me a piece of bread, right? Not take for me. So it should be, instead of take for me truma, it should be give to me truma, right? God is saying, if you, I'm coming to you now, I want you to build a temple where I will reside. Give for me the stones, give for me the money, give for me the walls, and give for me all of the pieces, the skins and things that I need. It doesn't though. It says take for me. So that's strange. You're not taking anything. So the truth is that we actually are. We understand that the giving of tzedakah, when a person gives charity, that the one who gives actually gets much more than they give. Right? At many levels. You go and in a normal circumstance, you go out and do charitable work. I don't mean giving money in this case. Just you go out and you want to feed the homeless. You want to go help, in a soup kitchen. You want to go and do work with the elderly, right? Right, like your volunteer work, right? So, are you helping them? Yep. They can't get out of bed. You're helping them out of bed. They need to use the washroom. You help them go to the washroom. They need someone to help them with their medication, to check on them. Or somebody they have no place to live, and you bring them some food, or you help them get to a place to sleep because it's cold out. Right? You're helping them, right? But the truth is, if you do this, you'll find out very quickly that you get much more than they do. They get a loaf of bread, right? They get a sandwich, and you get an amazing spiritual elevation. Not only do you get the actual mitzvah of helping someone, which is, right, what we get in the world to come is much greater than anything we can get here. Right? The smallest mitzvah is greater than any type of reward we can get here. But you will actually feel something here. You will actually feel that you've done something. You will get more. The Talmud says the mother cow wants to nurse the calf more than the calf wants to drink, even though the calf's hungry. Nevertheless, the mother wants to give more than the calf wants. Right? More so the mother wants to give than the calf wants to take. And that's why? Because the mother gets more. The mother, that's why we say that innately parents love their children. You don't have to educate a parent to love their children, but children do not innately love their parents. They love their parents only because they learn to. But parents, you see it all the time. If someone chooses, for whatever odd reason there is, that a woman's going to give birth and give up the child for her adoption immediately, they always say, don't let her see the baby. Because as soon as you let her see the baby, she doesn't want to do it anymore. You say, well, why? What does the baby do? At most, it's going to cry. Probably it does nothing. Nothing. It's just born. What's it going to do? They say, but don't show her, because as soon as you do, this love starts. Why? Because it's innate. It's part of the human experience. Because you gave that child life. When you give something to someone, you feel an attachment and a love. When you take something from someone, you feel embarrassment. At first, you feel grateful, but eventually you feel embarrassment. It's like if a person comes to me and they need money, they don't have, like they're saying they're having a hard time for a while. So I go to our charity fund and I give them money. They're very grateful, right? But if they have to keep coming to me for money, they will resent me. They will. Every time they see me, they'll resent me. And if it's a loan, it's even worse. Because when they take the loan, I say, I want to give you this loan, no interest, pay me whenever you want. Right? That's how I'm doing it. Right? And I'll only do that if they won't take the money for free. If they won't take charity, so I'll say, okay, it's a loan. Pay it back when you can. And what happens is that they build a resentment. They don't mean to, but they do, because they owe me. They feel indebted. Right? And not just me, with anybody. And I feel good, because I help them. So I actually gain more than they do. And it's the same thing here. So that's why God uses the expression, take from me truma. Right? Well, you're giving me truma. You're giving me gold and silver, right, to make the temple. But you're taking much more than you give. That's the point. And that's how it is. The idea of life is to give. That's what, we talk about the word in Hebrew of ahava, love. So the root word of every Hebrew word has like a message in it. Right? If you find out the root word of every word, you can understand what the word really means. So what's the root word of ahava, love, is hav. And hav means to give. Love with us means giving. So that if you want to, a very interesting thing that Talmud says, if you want that somebody should like you, so what do you think you do? If you want somebody, most people think, give them a gift. I'm going to give them like a nice pen, give them a watch, then they'll like me. It's not true. If you get them to give you a gift, and you show appreciation and you use the gift, they'll like you because they gave you the gift. Because they'll see that they have something you appreciate it. They're a part of you now. That people like. So it says, the Talmud says that if you want to like someone, if you're having a problem liking someone, give them a gift, and you'll like them. Because by giving, that's what it does. It causes affection. Receiving does not cause affection, but giving causes affection. That's why children, it talks about children being spoiled. What does that mean, that they're spoiled? What are they spoiled from? It means that you give them all the stuff all the time, right? And they don't appreciate it. So what spoiled has nothing to do with it. The word doesn't fit, but it actually does. Because what it is that you've spoiled a child from the ability to appreciate what they get. You give them so many things, right, because you love them and you want to give to them, but they get so many things they've lost the appreciation of ownership. So they get spoiled in the fact that from now on, the only thing they want is the act of receiving. They want to get something, but as soon as they have it, they don't want it anymore. You know, a child will see something on TV, they'll want this doll, you'll give them the doll. As soon as they have it, they see something else on TV. They don't want the doll anymore. What they wanted was the feeling of getting it. That means they're spoiled to appreciating what they have. That's why if we give too much, we spoil them. Right? The act of receiving is not the same as the act of giving. And if you have a love relationship, right, I tell people all the time when it comes to intimacy, the difference between why we say that intimacy between a husband and wife is a holy thing, which we'll actually talk about in this parsha, while the outside world says it's dirty, is because our idea of intimacy is that I have the ability to give a special gift to my spouse that nobody else can give her. That's special. And I'm giving. That's what I'm doing. Now, if we're both giving, we're both receiving, right? But the act of giving is an act of love. The act of taking, I'm only interested in me. I want to feel good, right? So I'm interested in how I feel when I'm intimate. That's dirty. That's ugly. Because then I only care about me. That's why you have, in so many cultures, you have this idea of prostitution is bad. So I don't mean because it causes what it does to the prostitute. Of course, that's terrible. But why is it bad, like for we think a single man to go to a prostitute? I mean, there are many reasons why, but in light of this, what we're saying is, he's saying, I'm using her so that I should feel good. I'm interested in my pleasure. So I go to her for that. Why am I not interested in her pleasure? Because I give her money. I don't care about it. So what am I doing? I'm taking from her. I'm taking pleasure from her. I'm not giving pleasure to her. I don't care about her. I'm only taking. That's dirty. That's ugly. That's what pornography is. That's destroying a very holy gift and turning it into something ugly. So the world outside thinks of intimacy and thinks about, I want to feel good, so it's dirty. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want. Right? That's something that we don't deal with. But in our world, we say intimacy is a gift. I give this to a person that I'm responsible for. I care for. That's my spouse. Nobody else is able to do this. Only I'm able to do this, and I have pleasure in giving this to her. She has pleasure in giving it to me. In the end, we both get pleasure. But instead of it being ugly and taking, it's beautiful in giving. Right? That's our whole idea. We give. Life is giving. Love is giving. The whole purpose of why we're here is to give. So here, and this lesson comes from here, when God says to us, the first discussion of charitable giving is, take this for me. What do you mean, take it? You give me $100 worth of gold, and you're taking millions of dollars of spiritual pleasure back. So you're taking, you're not giving anything, you're taking. Right? That's what it means. So it says, you should take from me this truma. Every person chooses to give. In this case, it's not talking about the laws of charity. This is talking about specifically for the Mishkan. And then it goes, this is the portion that you shall take from them. So what does God want? It says it right here in line 3. Gold, silver, copper, turquoise, purple and scarlet wool, linen and goat hair, red dyed ram skins, tachash skins, acacia wood, oil for illumination, spices for anointment, and the aromatic incense, shoham stones, and stones for the settings for the ephod and the breastplate. So these are all the things that God says he wants. Now, if you look at it, right, and until you know what all these things are, it appears that it's a hierarchy. Because what do I want? So I'm going to tell you what I want. All right, and the dearest thing first, gold. All right, after that, silver, then copper. Right, what's the most expensive? Then gold is the most expensive. Then silver is the next expensive. Then copper. Right, then you have turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool. Right, different shades of wool. Right, linen. Right, linen. Right, in history was a very cheap cloth. Today it's very expensive, but that's why we bury people in linen clothes, because we wanted anyone to be able to do a funeral. They shouldn't someone dies and you run away because you can't afford a funeral, they put them in linen clothes for that reason. So linen is cheaper than wool throughout the history of the world. And goat hair, which is rough, not like wool. Then you have animal skins, which you just get from an animal, doesn't take much, right? Some wood, oil, spices, right? And incense. It gets less and less and less. You go from gold all the way down. But then it says shoham stones and stones for the settings for the ephod and the breastplate. So these are what the Kohen wore, the Kohen right on his chest. These are precious stones. These are rubies, sapphires, right? So I just messed up. It really should be all the precious stones, then gold, then silver, then copper, right? But it's like gold, silver, copper, down, incense, precious stones. It's out of order, right? It doesn't make sense. Why does God tell us a hierarchy of money, right? What's most expensive? This is what I need you to give. Out of this list, give what you can. And it's a hierarchy of money. But it's not a hierarchy when something's wrong, because the beginning is expensive, it gets less and less and less, and then it gets to the most expensive. So it's out of order. So it tells us an interesting thing, that this sentence is not talking about what something is worth. It appears that way, but it's not. What it's telling you is how much effort it is in you to give it. Because it says that when it came to gold and silver and these things, the Jews acquired it from the Egyptians. That's how they got it. But they worked for it, right? They worked as slaves. That's how they got it. But the stones, people didn't have these jewels. They said the Jews in the desert didn't have access to rubies and diamonds and all these types of stones. So how do you get these stones, right? They didn't have such things. It says that because they didn't have it, and the Jews felt so bad that they didn't have it, it says that God made a miracle, and they came in on clouds, when the clouds brought them, right? So what it's telling us is an important lesson. The lesson isn't how much something costs, it's how much it affects you to give it. And if you had to get work as a slave to get gold, it affects you to give it away, because took your effort. You had to work to get the gold, and you had to work a lot to get gold. You work a little less to get silver. Right? But the stones might be the most expensive, but they didn't do anything for them. They were free. God brought them to them as a gift. Sure, it was a miracle, but it didn't. But what we're talking about here is God is not saying, "I want you to give expensive things." When you give, you should give something that that has meaning to you, that you've worked for, that has effort involved, that you care about. Then you give that to me, then that tells me something. God says, for a guy who's a multi-millionaire to give an ounce of gold, and for me to give an ounce of gold are two very different things, right? I don't even know what an ounce of gold is, but it's got to be a lot of money. And for me to have to do that, right, would make a big effect on me. So, but a real rich person, it wouldn't. So the Torah is saying it's not the amount of money, it's the amount of effort that you put into getting it. And in this case, the stones, there was no effort. It was a miracle. They came on the clouds, and God gave it to them so they could give them. So there was no effort. But the gold had a lot of effort. So that's why it's in this order. It's not telling you how much it's worth. It's telling you when you give charity, the worth of the charity has nothing to do with the cost of it. It has the amount of money. It has to do with the effect of that money. So for my salary, if I give $500 to a cause, and the guy next to me has half the salary of mine, and he gives $500, and the guy on this side makes 10 times what I make, and he gives $500, it's different. Mm-hmm. Right? I say sometimes, a guy is, I talk to fundraisers, and they say, I went to see so-and-so for a donation. Yeah, I said, what did he give you? He gave me $500. I said, $500? That's how he says no. Mm-hmm. Right? He's so wealthy, he doesn't want to. He's not going to argue with you and say no, but he's not going to give you real money. So he gives you $500. This way, he doesn't have to bother with you. That's saying no. $500. For me, $500, I can do that to like 2 places a year. That's it, right? But that, all right. So is $500 a good gift? You can't objectively answer the question. It's a good gift for me, but it's not a good gift from this guy. This guy would be giving to a charity he cares about, would be giving $50,000. But he doesn't care about your charity. It doesn't mean anything to him. It has no. You didn't sell it well, so he gave you $500 because you asked. He doesn't want to say no, so it's easier to give you that. So it's not the amount. That's what the Torah is telling us. It's the effort. It's the feeling that you get from it. Right? So that's the next part. All right, and so then it goes on through all different things, but on the last line on this page is a very important sentence. It says, "V'yasu li-mikdash v'shechanti b'socham." This statement is grammatically a mess. You should make for me a mikdash, and I will live among you. Right? But that's not what it should say. You make for me a temple, and I'll live among you. Well, what's he making a temple for? I said, here's what I want you to do. You want me to be your rabbi here? Okay, I'll be your rabbi. Give me a house, and I'll work in the synagogue. What's the house got to do with anything? Give me a house and I'll live there. So God should say, build for me a temple and I will live there. Right? But it says, build for me a temple and I'll live among you. Not only among you is not literal. Among you is how we understand it. But really it means in you. The socham, in you. Right? Inside of you. Build for me a temple and I will live inside of you. That's God is saying, yes, you have to build a temple. I want you to build this temple, which is where you'll be able to fulfill various rituals, which are important and significant and the world needs. And I will be a place where you can come and you'll hear my voice. Right? I won't just speak to you anywhere. I'll speak there. But on a deeper level, speaking to us today in 2014, he's saying, build for me a mikdash within yourself. Make yourself holy, and I'll live within you. I will be within you, or make your community holy, and I will live among you. That is, he's not just talking about the temple here. He's saying, if you as an individual become holy, I'll be there with you. I'm with you. Right? That's what you're doing. You're inviting me in. If you make your house holy, I'll live in your house with you. Right? You're inviting me into the house. If you make yourself as a person holy, I will be there with you. If you make your community holy, I will be there with your community. And if you don't, I won't. It's not that he isn't. God's everywhere all the time. What it means is that my presence is upon you. I'm there. We have a relationship. So that's what he's saying here. Make for me a temple, simple level. Okay, this is how you make a temple. Make for me the temple, and I'm going to dwell in the temple. That's the simple meaning. But like I said before, the Torah is not just speaking about those times. So it's telling us that. And the way you can tell is because it goes from make for me a temple and I'll live among you. It doesn't make sense. And it makes me a temple and I'll live in it. That's what it should say. And therefore we see that there's more to it. All right? Then he goes on. Now he starts talking about all the different things inside the temple. The ark. Now, there's a couple of interesting things they come out more later on as to where they're put and how they're put, and we'll get to it when we deal with it. But if we look at 448 and 449, we have a disclosure of the characters that are found inside of the Mishkan, inside of the temple, that are, according to a simple understanding, seem to be absurd. Right in the top, it says, you shall make a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits its length, and a cubit and a half its width. Fine. Now, you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. What are cherubim? Right? So cherubim, Rashi explains it, and he says, let's see, where is it? Purport is, no, maybe he's not saying it, but the commentaries tell us that the cherubim, I know there's a Rashi on it somewhere. I'm just not seeing it. So the Rashi on cherubim is that they were these entities that looked like babies, made out of gold with wings. And they're on top of the Aron HaKodesh in the Holy of Holies of the temple. And you had one on each side. Right? I don't know. They might even show you a picture somewhere.
In Johannes puts the head on. Gold, remember? Aron Kodesh is there.
Well, that's why I can't find the Rashi. I turned the page.
And on the side, gold.
So if you look here, you see on the top of that, these are very crude description of what they looked like. But it was, and the commentaries explain that one of them looked like a male and one like a female. But they were babies, right? And they were on top of the Aron HaKodesh. So it's like the holiest place. You have these 2 babies. And not only that, the Talmud tells us that this was a symbol to the Jews. That how do we know if we're doing the right thing? One of the ways we knew was that if the Jewish people were doing the right thing, then God and the Jewish people were united. And you saw the cherubim it says that they would be in an embrace. They would embrace each other. Now, what exactly that means, it doesn't tell us, but it leads us to believe from the Talmud that they were in intimate position together, like man and God. In other words, we're so close, we're like one, right? So this was representative of that. When God felt that our relationship was strained, they would face the opposite direction. So it was miraculous. You go into the temple and you would see these cherubim. But it says that when the Romans attacked the temple and they looked, it says that they saw them together in an embrace. They said, you see these Jews, they've got pornography in their temple. Look at this, right? This is one of the ways we understand that the outside world looks at intimacy as dirty. Right? That's what they saw. How could you have people like these two things in an intimate pose like in a church, in your synagogue, in the holiest place? It makes no sense. And for us, it makes a lot of sense because our idea of intimacy is a holy thing. In fact, the books that deal with the laws of intimacy between a husband and wife are called the holy books. That's the word they're used, because giving in this way is such a special gift that it's holy, it's unique, it's special, it's different. To the outside world, it's not. As a reference to that idea. So the cherubim, right? They looked, like I said, like one male, one female, and they were there. And when they came, when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians came in, and they went into the temple, or Titus and the Romans, they came in and they saw that they were in an embrace. You say, how can there be an embrace? The Romans are destroying the temple because of the Jews' sins. The Babylonians are destroying the temple because of the Jews' sins. God and the Jewish people are not close. They're destroying the temple. So the Talmud explains that, no, it's the opposite. That God was upset with us, and he destroyed the temple. And the reason the temple is destroyed is God destroyed his own house rather than us. Right? He destroyed his own house. Right? He didn't want to destroy us, even though we're the ones who did wrong. And then after that happened, he's not angry anymore. Now it's like a husband and wife, they have a fight, and they want to make up now. When you make up, it's much more intense than it was if you didn't have a fight in the first place. Not that it's a thing to do, but if the Jews had a fight, so to speak, with God, they were not acting correctly, and God was upset, and he was forced to do this to destroy the temple. Now that it's over, he wants to become close to us again, so he's no longer angry. Right? He did what he had to do, so now you see them back together. That's why when they went in there, they saw that, and they said, this makes no sense. The Jewish God is happy, and we're destroying the temple. It's not that he's happy. It's that he did what he had to do, and now he wants the relationship again. So that's what came from. Now, these cherubim tell us a lot of interesting things, and one of them is, you have to wonder, they're on top of the ark. Inside the ark was the original Torah that Moshe wrote. Inside of it was the Ten Commandments. Inside of it was many different things that are extraordinary things for our life, for us, for the veracity of Judaism and the foundation of Judaism. And they were on top of it. Right? That's where they were. So it's like the ark in the synagogue. They're on top of it. So, and they looked like babies. Right? They looked like babies. In fact, the word cherubim is like the Hebrew word for cabbage. Right? Which, like a baby looks like a cabbage, like he's like wrinkly and small, right? That's the idea. There's a similarity. So they were like this, and you have to say that. You have to ask them, why babies? If God wants to show intimacy, babies don't have intimacy. Adults do. Why do you have babies? Right? So the commentaries tell us is because what a baby is not is cynical. Babies are not cynical. Babies are happy, are sad, whatever they are, you know it. They are not like jaded. They're not cynical. They're not like nothing. With adults you can say nothing impresses me anymore. Nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing shocks me anymore. That's cynical. Right? That you see something good, you say, he's doing it for a different reason. He's not doing it because he wants to help. He's doing it because he's got to make money. He's not doing it because he wants to change the world. He's doing it because he wants the women. Right? That's a cynic. Babies aren't cynics. Right? One of the effects of a cynic is a cynic can't grow. He can't change. Because every time you try to impress him and get him to change, he just denies it. What is that? It's nothing. It's fake. Right? That's what they say. But a baby is impressed by everything. You show a baby something, you can make them, you can take a baby and you can just show them red, and they're happy. They see something new. You show them, you move your fingers, they get excited, right? Because they're always learning everything. They're totally new experiences. So they're telling us that if you want to have a relationship with Torah, you want to have a relationship with Torah, that's what it's sitting on the ark, then you have to be like that. You can't be a cynic. You can't be closed. You have to be open for change, open to grow, open to learn. So the Torah is telling us that in order for us to really have that perfect relationship with Torah and with the spirituality and with God, we have to look at the world like we're babies. That we're open, we're not cynical, we're not jaded, we're not it's not that we can't be impressed. We can be impressed. We can feel emotion, right? That's one of the reasons it says that they were made like babies, in order to teach us that lesson. Because babies are not closed. They're open-minded. They're learning and growing. That's what we have to be. So that's one of the things that it tells us here. Now, let's see. And then it goes through telling you what's made of what and how it's made and what's put where. We get now on 450 and 451, we get the menorah, and it says here on 450:31, the asisa menorah zahav ta'or mikshutas menorah. So it says, and you should make for the menorah out of gold, pure gold. You should bang out from one piece of gold this menorah, and then it tells you what it looks like. If you look here, this is according to some opinions what the menorah looked like. Right, and that's what it's telling us, right? And it goes through a whole explanation of the menorah. Now, the menorah, of course, is not like the menorahs we use on Hanukkah. This has 7 lights. Ours has 8, right? Actually 9 if you count the center one. So it's a different thing. But this menorah, it says that when God told Moshe to make a menorah, it says that Moshe didn't understand. What do you mean? What's a menorah? In other words, God tells Moshe, I want you to make a table. Okay, you know what a table was. He made the table. It's got to be made out of gold. It's got to be this height. Fine. He's like an engineer. Then you come to Moshe and you say, I want you to make a menorah. He says, what's that? What's a menorah? He didn't know what it was. So he keeps telling him, okay, a menorah, you should make the menorah out of gold. Okay, how do you make it? You should take one piece of gold and you should hit it until you create the menorah from it. It's from one block, not different pieces of gold put together. Okay, and he goes on to explain how tall, where it is, how it's done, each piece, and so forth. Right? So it says that, the Medrash says that Moshe still didn't understand. He didn't understand it. So he goes back to God and he says, I don't understand how I'm supposed to do this. So God says, okay, just go get a piece of gold, right? That you're gonna, and you have to soften it, right? In order to work with it. Because you got to bang it until it becomes this. It's got to be soft, so you have to heat it up. Go get a piece of gold and throw it in the fire. So he did, and a menorah came out. So you have to ask him, clearly, why didn't Moshe know what a menorah is? I mean, why is it any different than anything else? He knew what all these odd things were, but the menorah he didn't know. And didn't God know that he wouldn't know? God would know he wouldn't know. So then why does God tell him to do it? Right? Because he knows he doesn't know. Then he says, okay, I don't know. So God says, no, it's like this. And he explains to it again. He still doesn't know. So finally he says, okay, take a piece of gold and throw it in the fire, and I'll do it. So what does he have to throw the piece of gold in the fire for? God invented the gold. God invented the fire. He doesn't need Moshe to throw gold in the fire. He can just make the menorah come out of the fire. He can just make the menorah. Like, why does he go through all this? Tell him to do it when I know he can't do it. And then tell him to do it again in a different way. He still can't do it. Then you finally say, okay, go and just do something, right? And I'll take care of the rest. Why does he have to do something? God, just do it already. You see Moshe can't do it, so do it. So why does he go through this? Because God knows from the beginning that Moshe doesn't know what it is. He knows from the beginning that Moshe doesn't know how to do it. And no matter how many times he tells him he's not going to know, so why tell him? Just make it. So the idea is that we see in our society that we're very goal-oriented. We do things to accomplish a goal. If I can't accomplish a goal, then I'm not going to do it. And God's telling Moshe that it's not the goal that is, when it comes to your spiritual life, it's the effort. It's the effort that's important. You have to put in the effort. Do something, and I will respond to you. And the Medrash gives an example. It says that God says to us, go put a pinhole in your heart of inspiration, and I will open I'll open like giant auditoriums for you, big rooms. You make a little hole, I'll make a giant room for you. Right? So if God's going to make a big room for us, we have to make a little hole because we have to do it. We have to do something. We have to put in our effort, and then God will take it for us. But if we don't put in our effort, if we don't try what is humanly possible, God's not going to do it. We can't just wake up and we say, well, God, you created me, and you made me have a need to eat, so give me food. But he doesn't do it that way. We have to work for food. We say, okay, God, you told me that I have to procreate, find my wife. You bring my wife to me. He doesn't do it. All right, give me money. Doesn't do it. I need a place to live. Doesn't do it. Why? Because God wants us to put in our effort in everything we do to do what is humanly possible, and then he does the rest. No, we think, oh, if you're going to do all your human effort, God doesn't have to do nothing. I'm just going to do it. God wants me to go work for a living. I'll work for a living. Okay, I work for a living. I have enough money. Now I can buy food. I don't need God. Now what do I need him for? So the fact is what we do. Right, and I'll give you some examples, but there's a joke like this. Like a guy, and understand, the guy wants to, he's working on this thing, and he gets a meeting with the top guy. Let's say he comes up with a new software, and he gets a meeting with Bill Gates. So the meeting's in downtown Manhattan, and he's got to go see him, and the meeting's at 11 o'clock. So he decides he flies into Manhattan the night before. He stays in a hotel in Manhattan, and he only needs to take a limo, right, 2 blocks. Right, and so or a car. He has a car. He goes 2 blocks. All he has to go. So he goes and he can't find a parking spot. Right, it's Manhattan. So he's driving around and around and around, and it's like 10 before 11, 5 before 11, and he realizes if he doesn't have a parking spot, he's going to miss the meeting. Everything's destroyed because of a parking spot. So he says to God, God, please, I've been trying so hard. Give me a parking spot so I can go and do this meeting. So as he goes around the last time, right in front of the building, a limousine pulls out. Right, 2 spots. A limousine takes 2 spots, pulls right out. He pulls right in, right, 2 minutes before 11, and he says, "You know what, God? Forget it. I took care of it myself." Right? That joke illustrates what we're saying here, which is we put in the effort. That means we try our best to do things. But if God is not there to help us, it won't work. But God won't help us unless we put in the effort. We have to try. You have to do things. If you see somebody's in pain, you have to try to help them. You cannot physically cure them, but you can help them, and God will cure them. And if you don't help them, he may not cure them. Right? If I'm sick, God forbid, I go to a doctor. Why should I go to a doctor? I just pray to God, make me better. No, I got to go to a doctor. Right? If I go to the doctor and the doctor does this, this, and this, God makes me better. That's right. So you see this, like for instance, there are probably more important things in the world than the example I'll use, but there may be with medical cures. But I remember when I was considerably younger, they invented CDs, right? And we had these LPs, big records, and then they came out with CDs. So the CDs were developed in Japan and in Holland. And they were developed in Japan and Holland at the same time, in 2 different ways, but the same thing, without each one knowing about the other until they came out. So how was that? Imagine that in the world, nobody came up with the idea of using digital ideas for music. Suddenly, it became an idea in 2 different parts of the world at the same time. And they came up with the same thing, just slightly different in how it was done. Well, how was that? Or how is it that you can have somebody working in America and somebody working in Europe and somebody working in Asia on a cure for a sickness, and all 3 discover the cure at the same time? And it happens. They come up with it at the same time. How is it that they do that? I'm not talking about where there's espionage. They really are working separately, and suddenly they all come up with it. How is that possible? Because we put in the effort, and then God finishes it. So why should God finish it just for the guy in Holland? He'll finish for the guy in Japan too. He brings the wisdom. God says, okay, now we're going to let the world have this wisdom. How do you cure this disease? And boom, everybody working on it suddenly gets the cure. Right? And by virtue of the fact that different people in different places come up with the same results for something at the same time, after they're all doing it in different ways in different places, shows you God's hand. Right? That's one of the ways of looking at it. And that's what happens here. God says to Moshe, make a menorah. I don't know what that is. So he says, this is how you do it. Go and do it. I don't know what it is. He says, all right, just take a piece of gold and throw it in the fire. Right? So why do you have to take a piece of gold and throw it in the fire? Just make the menorah, God. You're clearly throwing a piece of gold in the fire is not making a menorah. Right? He throws in the piece of gold and a menorah comes out. Because God says you have to put in the effort. So in our lives is the same thing. Right? God gives us children. Right? Why do we have to educate and take care of our children? God wants us to have them. Each child is going to grow up to be an independent adult, be responsible for itself. So then, what's the difference what I do? God wants him to be an independent adult, to fix things within his own soul. So God will take care of him, and when he's old enough to think for himself, he'll have to do his own job. Then until then, what's the difference what I do? Well, the fact is, there is a difference. You have an effect on that child. You can do things to that child. You can harm that child. You can make his life better or worse. You have that ability, right? You don't have total control, but you have the ability to affect it. God has the final control. So he's saying, Moshe, you don't have total control about making anything that I'm telling you. And the menorah is just the example I'm using. Everything I tell you, you think you know. I tell you have to make a wall out of skin. You think you know how to do it. All right? You don't know. You're working at it. I'm finishing it. Well, you think I'm telling you a story? So go make a menorah. You don't know what that is? Just throw some gold in. It comes out. Now, do you know what it is? No, he still doesn't know. Why? Because God is saying, put in the effort, I'll do it. In every part of our life. Right? We talked about my daughter getting engaged. Same idea. So she puts in effort. She dates here, she dates there. She's looking for a guy. And then suddenly, boom. How does that happen? It's the right guy, the right girl. I mean, the fact that if we really believe in the idea that the people have a concept of being destined for each other, so to speak, right? Even if there's more than one person, let's say, that you're destined for, but still, there's someone, right? How does anybody find the person? How do you ever find that person? And if I go around this room, every one of you got some crazy story of how you met somebody that's totally absurd. Right? They're from a different part of the world, from a different background, different socioeconomic level, different gender for sure, right? All of these things are coming into play, and suddenly you met the right one. How does that happen? We met the right? Is that like I got the best, matchmaker, and the matchmaker did it? It's not true. Right? The same matchmaker doesn't always work. It's just sometimes. Because it's God puts his hand in there. It says that after God created the world and he did all the miracles right through the giving of the Torah, now he sits in heaven and he makes matches. In other words, so to speak, because it's very, very difficult. Right? We can't figure out how it works. He does. Suddenly you find a person and you have this attraction. You don't know why. What is it? Why this person you want to marry? Like if I tell people all the time, they say to me, my daughter needs to get married. Maybe you know some guys, and I'll try. But I always tell them, there's not a couple I know that I think they should be together. I would never put them together. And yet they are together. Then it makes perfect sense, and they have wonderful marriages, and they've grown and become wonderful people because of it. But if you'd come to me before they were married and say, should this person marry this person? I'd say, are you crazy? There's nothing there. There's nothing similar. This one's this and this one's this. Like different races, different genders, different backgrounds. Right? This one is this one's loud. This one's quiet. This one's loud. This one's loud. None of them work, but they do. Okay? God does it. We have the appearance that we're doing it, and we have to put in the effort. And God allows us the ability to feel that we've accomplished something, but the reality is He's doing it. Right? That's what the menorah tells us. Right? By God doing it that way, by making something that Moshe could not do on his own, and not just saying, okay, you can't do it, get out of here. It's like you have a kid, he can't. He has a science project and he can't do a science project, so you do it. You make the science project. Well, that's not going to teach the kid how to do a science project. You just did it. Now you're going to go to school and you're going to get an A on your kid's science project, but your kid won't get nothing, right? But that's how we are. God doesn't work that way. If you don't put in the effort, then it's not going to happen. He'll make you do it. You'll want to do it, and He'll make it happen. I mean, that's what it's telling us here. All right, we'll just do one more thing, then we're already over on time. All right, I'll tell you something that's outside of it rather than inside the actual words. As we go through this section, we find that God tells the Jewish people either 2 or 3 times in here that they have to do a collection. They have to do a building campaign to build the Mishkan. So there's there's different parts. There's the building campaign for the building. There's a building campaign for the contents. So what's the third one? Again, some people say there's a third one. And if you look at the wording, it sounds like it. The third one was for something called the vovin. And the vovin were the hooks that attach everything together. Right? Right? So you'd say, I can understand today. I come to you and say, I need, can you give me a donation? I'm building a new shul. So, a new shul, yeah, sure. I like to help with that. Maybe I can donate a room in memory of my parents. Who doesn't want to be a part of that, right? That's building for a building fund. That's easy. I say, okay, we've got a building. We have nothing in it. I need like a place to put the Torah, or I need a Torah. People say, oh, I'll do that, right? And I say, no, I don't need. I got that. You know what I need? I'm doing a fund. I have to get nails. I need nails to make the building. Can you give me nails? No one wants to give you nails. Like, what are you going to do? There's nails in memory of my father. Like, I gave 100 nails in memory of my mother. Like, that's a joke. Who's going to give you money for that? So God says, I'm going to do 3. You have to do 3 campaigns. You have to, number 1 for the building, and number 2 for the contents, number 3 for these attachers that attach like the hooks. The hooks that would attach the skin to the that was made the wall. It attached it to the the wood or the boards that were surrounding it, or it would attach the different pieces of wood together so that you could make the walls, right? Like a nail, but it was a hook, right? So why did they do that when nobody seems they'd want to give? Because the vovim are very fundamental and important things. First thing, they're part of the foundation of the building, and the foundation has to be solid. Therefore, people give to that because we realize how important that is. But another thing is, what is a vovin? Comes from the letter vav. The letter vav looks like a hook, right? It's up with a little thing on the top. That's why it's called that. But what does a vav do? When you're speaking Hebrew, if you put a vav in between 2 words, it means and. I have this and this, right? Vav means and. So I've got, let's say I've got, donuts and coffee. So there's donuts, there's coffee. I have donuts and coffee. Now I'm bringing it together, right? I have a man and a woman. I'm bringing them together. It's not man and woman. It's man and woman. Bringing them together, right? A vav is something that it's called vav hachibur, something that attaches. And the Torah is telling us that to attach things together, primarily people, to bring people together, to unite them rather than separate them, is a fundamental foundation of Judaism. We need to understand that. And therefore they did a special campaign for that because people didn't understand it. And they said that why would God make a special campaign for this? It has to be important, but we don't see the importance. They had to now understand the idea of attaching people together, bringing them together, like building, by taking pieces and putting together. You take people and bring them together. You don't separate people, you unite people. That is fundamentally important. Right? As long as we have the Jewish people united, we can do anything. When we're not united, we can't do anything. Right? If you go home, like I'll tell my wife that I do counseling, and people have many problems, and I really care for them, and I try to help. And I argue with my friends who use the medical model, who say when you go and do counseling, you have to distance yourself, because if you're like get involved, emotionally involved, you'll kill yourself. Right? You can't do that with everybody. And I say, if I don't do it, I'm not effective. People have to know I care, and that's half the fixing it halfway already. Just they know I care, then they feel better. Then I try to help them. But sometimes people come to the problem and they have to console me. I'll get more upset than they are because it'll bother me that much. Right? That's because I attach myself to them. It's not me. I'm not extraordinary this way. That's natural. Right? When somebody you care about comes to you, the question is, how many people do you care about? The more people you care about, that someone comes to you with a problem, you feel their problem. Why? Because you're attached to them. You're united with them. And that's how you help people, by being united. And that's what the vovim tell us, that if you have to make a special campaign, not because they need a special campaign, but because we need to know that they're important, that they're fundamental. Right? It's not so, nobody wants to donate the thumbtacks. Right? Nobody wants to donate the nails. But you have to realize that if you're making something with hooks, you don't want to donate the hooks either, but understand that the hooks are important. They hold the building together. They hold the pieces together. They hold the corners together. They hold people together. And that's what's important. And that's what that's telling us. So as you see here in the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about what appears to be very mundane. We're going to have a couple of weeks about building the temple. Then we're going to talk about the Kohen's clothes, all the different things that Kohen wears, at which, like, I'm not a Kohen, so even if we had the temple, it doesn't mean a lot to me. But we don't have the temple, and we don't even know really who's Kohanim for sure. And we certainly don't know, like, what these things all look like exactly. There's different opinions. So what do I care? Well, because there's much more depth to it. And as we saw today, we'll see it in the next few weeks.